I know. We're going to try to entertain you guys for a half hour or so here. First, I wanted to say thank you to the Church Dwight team for a really nice reception, a great day so far. Really an honor to be here and to do this panel for you guys. As Steve and I were prepping, we were talking a little bit about the proper pronunciation of Mondelēz. And he informed me that that is not the correct pronunciation, and that it has some meaning. So to kick it off, tell everybody, Steve, the proper pronunciation and the genesis of the name itself.
Mondelēz is easy to say, so that's what I normally say in most public forums, but the actual pronunciation is Mondelēz. So mon meaning world, Delise meaning delicious. So they're supposed to be delicious world. And actually,
you learn something every day.
When we split with Kraft, the name actually came up from an employee. There was employees that submitted a bunch of names, that was the name. Some employee picked it up. So
I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah, I have one tidbit. So the woman who was just talking about the sustainability and so just the facts. So I love the facts, right? So one impression, correct me if I'm wrong. One impression is worth one carbon emission. So 1 million impressions is worth 1 cubic ton of CO2. So just think about the number of, so I actually did a little talk a month ago with somebody from Program This. So if you think about the number of campaigns, I don't know anybody in this room, like, so how many people do campaigns that are 1 million impressions or over, right? So if you think, and then think about the number of brands, so look across the brands on the wall. Think about the number of impressions and the number of carbon emissions that we're submitting out in the marketplace. So I would suggest reading her article and going to because there's some cool stuff out there. So some really interesting stuff. So sorry.
That's okay.
Deviate from the script.
That's okay. We can go off script. It's all right.
That's true. We only practiced yesterday for about 10 minutes. So.
We're pros. We don't need it. To kick it off, what are some trends and advancements in omnichannel marketing, from your perspective, that brand marketers, brand leaders can adopt or think about?
First, if you don't mind, I was going to kind of say like who the heck I am.
Oh, okay.
I run a couple different things I'm responsible for a couple different things at Mondelēz. I'm responsible for our shopper marketing group, our point of sale group, or our displays, which are we see somebody else was talking about availability, so super important for that. I'm involved in our industry fairs, and lastly, our partnerships both with vendors and then with other CPGs. So we do a lot of partnerships with like Coke or Gallo Wine and that kind of stuff. So
very cool. Thank you for the introduction. That was on the script.
That's true. We did talk about that last time.
It's been a long day since yesterday.
That's true. That's true.
Anyway, back to the question.
Back to the question. So I'll answer questions kind of more from my lens, if you will. So responsibility for the shop marketing aspects of the company, and then the displays and all that kind of stuff. So to answer your question, I'd say they're very similar to the stuff that you're facing from a brand marketing perspective, right? So that consumer trends or consumer habits or consumer behaviors aren't different than shopper behaviors, right? The same. We're struggling against the same thing. Everybody wants to move towards more digital. Everybody wants to do more experiential stuff. Everybody wants to do less clicks. Everyone wants to have everything faster, quicker, sooner. People, I say this all the time, which is probably bad, like people are lazy, right? So like, how do you, kind of give them something so that they can live their, lazy life, I guess. So how do you deliver against that? So it's the same things you guys are facing. I say the one thing that's probably different for me, what I'm facing maybe than traditional, I'll call it brand marketers, is retail media networks. So you guys may be touching some of those. I touched a bunch with Ken back there, a little bit about retail media networks, but for us, the onslaught of retail media networks from everybody from Walmart to Kroger to Target, Albertsons to convenience stores from 7-Eleven to Casey's, it's amazing. And it is a huge profit area for them, and it's a huge focus area for them, and it's a point of differentiation for them in the marketplace. So that is probably a little bit different than maybe some other folks are potentially facing.
Yeah, very cool. The next we want to do the example. Like, can you share an example? And I believe we have a video of something that you guys did at Mondelēz how you effectively reach your consumers across a various group of touch points. I don't know if we have a.
Yeah, so we do this all the time, so I figured a video probably is better than me speaking.
That's awesome. Pretty good success, I would say.
Yeah, I was gonna give myself a credit.
So shifting gears a little bit, what are some of the key challenges that brands face when implementing omni-channel marketing, and how can they overcome them?
I think the challenge is, at least what I see, or what I've experienced, is probably threefold. One is we try to do too much, right? So you try to touch the consumer or the shopper in every aspect along their journey. So you throw every tactic in the world at them, and you spend and you end up watering everything down, or you spend too much money and the ROI is horrible. The other end is probably the other spectrum, which is you kind of like focus on one tactic and you push a ton of money at it, and that's not very effective either. So those are kind of like the yin and the yang of the negativity, if you will. And I'd say probably the third area, which we've kind of fallen into, and I've seen some other people as well, is you expect one thing to work well here in here, right? So you expect it to work here, X and Y. So, for instance, an Oreo program at Kroger is going to look very different, or should look very different than, say, a Nutter Butter or a Trident program at Dollar General. The consumers are different, or the shoppers are different, the amount of money they have to spend is different, their families are different, their trip mission is different, everything about it is different. So you can't just throw the same tactics and expect it to work. So like, those are the challenges that I've seen, and we've done a bunch of post analytics to kind of tease out that stuff, and I've seen like where we've gone wrong and kind of course corrected to help fix some of those issues.
Well said. I was curious, I wanted to ask you this yesterday, so I want to ask now in front of everybody. I know it's like, I know it's like, choosing your favorite child, but do you have a product in the portfolio that is, your ultimate favorite, like to eat, to enjoy? Mine's Oreos, so.
So, super tough question. So I joined the organization, and actually somebody's here who I work with, so Steph back there, I was on the candy business, so Sour Patch Kids and Swedish Fish are kind of like
awesome.
Like because I worked on the business, I actually helped create the campaign way back when, the Sour Than Sweet. So that is like, and it's still playing today. So it's like, I'm not gonna say how long ago that was, but like if you create a good campaign with a good strategy, like it shouldn't change. So that's the best part about it. It's just evolve with the time and actually become much more contemporary, if you will. But the same core strategy is the same. So I'd probably defer to kind of the Sour Patch and Swedish.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Shifting over to messaging and consistency of messaging, how can brand marketers ensure consistent messaging across omni-channel marketing efforts in general?
This one, it's a great question, because I actually got an email on this morning from one of my brand partners. So I was gonna say it's fairly easy to do, but it's actually fairly complicated, right? So like, if you create so I'll just give an example. If you create a great IMC program up front, and you create the right assets, and you do it in the right lead time, you should be able to pull that through to every customer. So like, I should be able to pull that through to Walmart, to Kroger, to Augustine, whatever. I should make that look and feel across the marketplace fairly simple. The issue is the program changes a lot. I was a brand marketer, so I'm going to make fun of myself. Like you tweak things all along up until it gets in the marketplace. Every time you change the headline or the tagline or the key visual, guess what? Everybody downstream, so shopper marketers or e-commerce people, think about the non-working that we're wasting downstream, kind of having to make all those changes to make sure that it's consistent with the national strategy. So like, that's one thing that I know that we've kind of struggled with, is kind of syncing that timing up, in advance. Because from a customer perspective, we're selling in 9 months out in advance, 12 months out in advance, maybe 6 months depending on the customer. But from call it a brand marketer perspective, they're probably, a month out before they have to finalize. So like, I can't wait a month out to actually sit in front of Walmart. All the space is gone. Everything I want to get from them is gone. I gotta sell it 9 months or 12 months in advance. So that struggle, that tension of trying to get assets that are consistent and look and feel or whatever. That's why I said it's easy in theory. The trouble is actually getting far enough in advance and then locking it and then saying, okay, no more, pencils down, if you will, like no more changes. Because if you really think about it, the changes from 9 months out to, month out are probably, the 90-10 rule. And you can probably get rid of the 10 and save a lot of money.
Yeah, awesome points. I want to bring data up. What role does data play in, how a brand can effectively utilize, collect, analyze all of the data points to enhance their strategies? What are some things that you can do there?
So we use data in a lot of different aspects. So I would say, you can think about data in a lot of different ways. So data from, consumer insight perspective, right? So like, that would help inform what the brand positioning is, what the messaging is, what the programming is, et cetera. So I would say data from that perspective. Then you can kind of flip it over and say, okay, what's the shopper insight? So again, the data informing what the shopper is. So what's the shopper mission, as we kind of just referring to, like the Albertsons mission is way different than, kind of the CVS mission. So what is that shopper looking for? What do they have? How much money do they have to spend? And what am I targeting them with? The third area, I'd say, from a data perspective, is probably around like first-party data. So, and I apologize for not knowing your business well enough or not, if you guys have first-party data or not, but I'm assuming you have some sort of first-party data. So how can you use that first-party data, potentially leverage retailers' first-party data, smash those up against each other, create the optimal audience so you're reaching the optimal target. So leveraging, kind of, if you will, the first-party data. And then the last part of data that I think about is kind of like analytics. And I mentioned it earlier before. So we partnered with this company called the Mars Agency, and we built a proprietary tool where we put all our shopper plans in this model, or in this tool, I should say. And that tool then feeds into a model directly. So I can tell you the model that is a regression-based model, which gives me ROIs on our program at a high level. I can tell you the ROIs by customer, so by retailer. I can tell you the ROIs by brand. I can tell you the ROIs by program. I can tell you the ROIs by tactic, or I can tell you the ROIs by program by tactic on the last 5 years of programs that we ran. So when I said before about like the things that I've learned and how it's influenced kind of like where I've been, it's because of looking at that data set. I don't necessarily take one piece of data that inflect, but like 5 years worth of history, you've got a pretty good baseline, a good trend to say, yeah, that's not really working, or yeah, this is, and again, the past doesn't always predict the future, right? But it's the best predictor of the future, but it's, whatever it is, 40% accurate. So it's a good starting point, and you can kind of use that as learning. So we are very bullish on leveraging data to help inform, kind of how to go to market in a better way.
Well said. So shifting over to consumer or customer engagement and conversion, what are some best practices for optimizing to those items in an omnichannel environment?
So I'll probably give you some snippets, and they're probably not rocket science, so I apologize in advance, but these are all been quantified through that data I just talked about. So some fairly high-level things that that folks here would probably say, yeah, that makes sense. So trial tactics, right? Trial drives, the ROI trial is hard. Not horrible, but it's not great, right? But again, getting somebody to buy your product who's never bought your product versus getting somebody to buy more is always harder, right? So like, that makes sense. So you have to keep that in mind. And the way we MMMs work, or MMAs, or however you want to define it, so marketing mix models work, they, hinder or put the R behind, if you will, trial tactics, if you will. So I would just say, think about lifetime value when you're looking at trial tactics. We've done a bunch of analysis where we actually looked at longer time horizons, where spends we were like, oh my God, it's a horrible spend. And we've looked at, a year's worth of a shopper and a program and said, oh my God, that was actually a really good spend because of what it actually turned out. That you need good data for, so going back to the data question, so there's some good customers out there, so 8451's a great customer because you can follow them through their, kind of purchases. The second one is digital's the best ROI in the marketplace, right? So we quantified that. It's dropped a little bit over the last 2 years for us, but it's still the highest one in the marketplace. Multiple tactics work the best for us, but not too many. So it's like 3 is like the perfect number, if you will, from a tactic standpoint. Retail media networks, lower ROI than everything else that we have. Again, so if you think about it theoretically, a retail media network is 3 times the cost of going to a regular publisher, say at Google or Facebook or whatever the case may be. That means the targeting's got to be, and the lift on the back end's got to be 3 times more effective than just general awareness kind of messaging. That's a super hard ask, and I'm not sure if we're ever going to get there. So multiple brands or big brands drive a better ROI. So I love the campaign that I just saw, the kind of the master brand campaign. To me, it was a great campaign. Plus, I think that's going to drive huge ROIs because of the scale it's going to drive. Now, people that work on smaller brands, Hero folks or wherever, smaller brands, we've seen some good ROIs. You just have to be super careful as the client. Don't fall into the trap of saying, hey, I got to spend a ton of money. Be surgical in your approach still. So.
Yeah, follow up to that. You mentioned digital as being the number 1 for ROI for you guys. What's number 2?
It's a great question. I always focus on digital because that's all anybody cares about. And it's probably, digital is actually now like 65% of our customer spend. So like my area, it's like 65% of our spend. And 5 years ago it was 25%. So the flip, where we used to spend a ton of money on, call it in-store sampling or kind of in-store POP and that kind of stuff, that kind of stuff has gone away in the effectiveness, for us at least, and it's kind of shifted over to digital.
Cool, very interesting. Wanted to talk a little bit about technology and automation and driving omnichannel marketing success, and I believe we have a video to demonstrate that.
Yeah, before we go to video, sorry.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things on tech. So I'd say tech is 3 things, right? Or at least I think about it as 3 things. One is AI and ChatGPT, right? Like, so think about like that and where that's going to take. Like, I didn't even know about that until 9 months ago when my kid was telling me about how they were using something in college. I'm like, great, I'm glad I'm paying for this. But she was like, Daddy, I got to be careful because you get busted for plagiarism. I'm like, well, no crap, because all they're doing is pulling from there. It's like, so it makes sense. But think about where that is, and I probably should have done this, getting prep for this. Like, I knew the questions we talked about. Oh, well, we'll talk about these things at a high level. I'm like, I probably should have just typed into ChatGPT and it would spit out the answers for me. I would have been smart. I didn't think about that. But like, how you can use ChatGPT now to like build your resume, answer interview questions, just prep yourself. It is crazy. And where it is the 1.0, the 2.0 version, and then 3.0. Crazy. So that, I think, a tech that standpoint. The other one is like the metaverse, right? So Web3, like where that is and where it's going, and do your brands fit there? Do they don't fit there? What's the return? Why should you play there? Is it a game? Is it an experience, etc.? We've dabbled a little bit. We don't know if it's the right place for us to play. Like Oreo's dabbled a little in it, and you would think of all brands that kind of maybe makes sense, but it hasn't proven out yet for us. So then the third area, from a tech standpoint, is like programming. Like, how do you use tech to like create cool programming? And that's the video we're going to show.
What metrics and KPIs do you feel like brand marketers should be paying attention to and looking at, to drive omnichannel marketing success?
I would say first it has to start with the objective. So what's the objective of the campaign? So another email from this morning was we're about to release our plans for 2024, so back and forth with my brand partners. It's like, I'm launching this line extension, and we're trying to get new people in the franchise, and we're trying to drive buy rate. I was like, well, what are you trying to do? Oh, we're trying to do both. I was like, no. What are you trying to do? Like, give me the objective, and the objective's got to be singular and mashed in fashion in order for me to, kind of drive it. Because if it's not, I'm going to be all over the place, and you're going to get no results, right? So like, you want me to be singularly focused, so then I can push my team to be singularly focused. So, super clear on whatever your objective is probably the most important thing, I think. From our standpoint, like, we look at kind of like 3 things. First is consumption, right? So I kind of talked about ROI, so we're an ROI-focused company. Consumption, we look at like what passes through the register. So I think about my job. My job is to like have things go through the register, be it online or in store. My job is also to drive incremental category growth. So how do I benefit my customers' category so that, you know, they're calling me for the next opportunity that comes down the pike. So we look at consumption and ROI as kind of like the holy grail. The next one we look at is kind of like the marketing metrics, if you will. So like click-through rate or impressions, or I hate ROAS or iROAS, that kind of stuff. I hate ROAS just because you can artificially inflate it or whatever. That's a whole other session, whatever. So that's probably the second, and the third would be if you have the data, is like the household penetration, buy rate, all that kind of stuff, if you can get the data. So like, again, there's only certain customers you can get that data from, or certain places. So those are kind of the three places.
How much time do you guys have to unpack ROAS? You don't want to do that? I wasn't going to go there. So we want to talk now a little bit about how brands can effectively leverage consumer insights to develop, you know, an impactful strategy and adapt and evolve their omnichannel marketing response to, you know, an ever-changing consumer behavior. How can we do that?
Well, I think, you know, we kind of talked a little bit about it before, and it's all tied back to kind of like figuring out kind of what the insight is for that consumer or that shopper, and what you're trying to achieve, so, or what their problem is. So again, I kind of mentioned my job is to drive, you know, packages through the register. That's all our collective jobs, right? All our collective jobs are to make a consumer who's their brain is telling them no, your job is to make them, is to persuade them to say yes, right? Your job is to make them turn right when they go in the store versus turning left, to go down an aisle or go to your display or whatever the case may be. So that's our job as marketers, is like to convince people that they should be adding our products to their called mental, you know, grocery list. So how do we go about doing that? It's like getting underneath them, understanding what their needs are, what their really wants are, and then figuring out kind of like how can I deliver, as you guys kind of just showed in that last kind of session, is like how do I deliver the right messaging and the right product and the right proposition to those consumers in the right place, such that they will, you know, kind of jump on that.
Well said. I'm curious a little bit about, you know, what your point of view is on the role of storytelling and brand narrative as it relates to omnichannel marketing, and how brands can effectively utilize these elements.
So I think, you know, storytelling, as you think about it, is like that's our job, right? So our job is I'll go through a couple of this, right? So it's super important to do storytelling, like for consumers and shoppers, right? So like your brand is actually the story to the shopper, right? So like how it looks on shelf, how it appears, the advertising, like that is a story for them. That connects with them. So that's the first, is consumers and shoppers. I'd say the other thing is like you have to convince your sales force of the importance of your brand or your product or the proposition or whatever you're trying to sell them on, because you want them super jazzed when they're going in, because they have 28 other priorities, and they can get distracted. I'm a salesperson now, so I can say that. So you want them focused on your stuff, so like what is the appropriate storytelling there? And then lastly, I think it's like internal, right? So like you have to sell internally or create the right story internally to get people galvanized around your brand and your mission, because you're fighting your peers, if you will, for funding, right? So we heard before, like somebody's like, oh, my stuff is super more effective than the other person. She was in essence, creating a story saying, hey, I should get more funding. Like, that's what we do. Our job is to like create the best results for our company to drive the best shareholder value and get the most money.
Her CMO was here too, so that was very
that didn't hurt. That didn't hurt.
So I think we're about at time.
Yeah, we do have an opportunity here. I got a little hungry. Yeah, he saw it already. So, one question, the first hand up gets to start the break early. Oh, Brett Richardson. Thank you for not making me wrong.
I don't need the Oreos that you can.
Anybody else?
I will take it back.
I'll take the question.
Okay.
Who is your least favorite retailer? Yeah, my question is, as Steve, as you're working with your sales team and ultimately negotiating with your retailer friends, what are you looking for in those negotiations to have your retailers evolve in their practice and their offerings to you and the Mondelēz crew?
Huge question, so it probably in a couple different areas. So like from a JBP perspective, I'm looking for some sort of value out of it, right? So on just a program, I'm looking for, I always call it assets. Like I'm looking for their assets. So I want physical space in store because, you know, again, my products, you know, just showed like, right? So my products are high impulse, high incrementality. Like, so if I get them in people's hands, they're gonna eat them. So like, if I could get more floor space, so I always look for floor space or displays, but I also look for digital space because, you know, the world's evolved, right? So I always look for assets. So how do I get more than my fair share of, if you will, assets from the retailer? That's probably the biggest thing that I try to put in the negotiations. The other thing is I try to tie media purchases or media spend or media JVP with the total JVP. So here's our total, like I always try to go back to, I was like, here's our total pot of money. I'm glad I can put 100% of it in retail media. I can put 100% in in-store, you know, TVs at Walmart, you know, the back wall TVs, if you deliver these things for me. And these things are, you know, go down the list, right? Distribution, you know, displays, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So I'm okay shifting around, and that's where the real, actually, to be honest with you, that's where the real conversation and tension takes place, because they try to keep those two things separate. We try to bring them close. I'm assuming you guys do something similar. You try to bring them together. And so certain customers, we've had better luck of bringing those two together. Other customers, it's still a challenge. The other thing we're constantly looking for is like better measurement, and better measurement and quicker measurement. So the measurement and the results are like so after the marketplace, it's like crazy. It's like I need stuff way sooner so I can adapt and evolve that. And also I want to apply that, I'm going to apply that elsewhere, whatever the learnings are. So they have to get better, way better on their measurement. That's another hit, the ROAS comment.
The perfect speaker to leave you hungry for more before the break.
Oh, perfect. No way.
Steve from Delicious World.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.